Good morning, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft. Today I thought I'd bring you along on a little journey where I'm going to replace a couple of modern pieces of gear within my kit that I carry out with me when I spend some time out in the bush. And today I'm going to take this stick and I'm going to make it into a throwing stick, which will replace my slingshot. And I'm going to take this piece of bamboo and I'm going to turn it into a frog gig. So stay with me and I'll show you the process and exactly how I do that. Okay, I have a stick here and it's about the length of from the palm of my hand up to my armpit, and it's got a little bit of a crook in it, and that's actually good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end that's most comfortable for my hand and leave it plain. And the other end, I'm going to put a little point to it and I'm going to clean this up, and that will make an effective throwing stick. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of bamboo and I left it long. This thing is probably, I don't know, 15, 16 feet long, and I can trim it off later to the length that I need. But I'm going to come up here to the very end of this and get a place that's about as big around as my little finger. I'm going to cut that off, I'm going to sharpen it down, and then split it about 4 ways and put some small barbs on it, and that'll help to hold the frogs on there as I gig it, or even some fish. Okay, in a matter of just 10 minutes or so, we've got our throwing stick cleaned up, and what I've done is I've removed the bark. I've taken off a couple of the rough edges over top of where there were some knots. That doesn't bother me as far as a throwing stick, but if I stick this in my pack and I want to pull it out to throw it quickly, I don't want it hanging on those knots, so I smooth it down a little bit. Now the end I've rounded over just a little bit, just enough to take the sharp edge off, and that's in case I want to use this as a digging stick and I've got my hand on top, it doesn't cut into my hand. And on the other end, I've put a little bit of a point on it. Now it's not sharp. This is a blunt force trauma weapon. The end of it is just sharpened up kind of like a pencil, just in the last 1.5 inches, and that's just to give me a little bit of a better edge when I start to use it as a digging stick. And who knows, maybe it will hit the animal right in the end and that'll help out a little bit. So that's the throwing stick. Simple, easy, 10-15 minutes, and you have a replacement for your slingshot. Okay, we're going to move on now and try to create us a fish or a frog gig. And you can tell I've cut the end of the piece of bamboo at an angle, and it's about as long as my pointer finger here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and split it in half, and then I'm going to split it again in 4, so I'll have 4 different prongs. Okay, now that we have our end cut off, what we're going to do is we're going to pull these apart and simply sharpen them. Being careful not to break them. I'm not doing anything fancy here, I'm just taking it, and as a matter of fact, I don't want a real sharp point to it because it'll be easier for it to break off. But I do want it sharp enough that when I hit the fish or hit the frog, it'll stick through them. And it doesn't even matter if they're all even or not. Now, I've taken a small piece of the bamboo that was the next nodule up, and I'm going to place that in the center. Take this little piece of bamboo and shove that down in there. And what that does is open up the gig. And now we have something large enough that we actually increase the area rather than having a single point to stick into the frog. We have a 4-sided gig. Now I'll put some little barbs on it. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to come in here, get it down at the end of the table. Let's see if you're still in camera there. Let's see here. Alright. I'm going to take this and I'm going to come in here and take one of these bottom ones, and I'm just going to cut me a little V in it. Now that will weaken this a little bit at that point, but what it also does is it gives me a place so that when the frog comes on, it'll be bigger coming back off than it was going through. Okay, so there's an example of how each one of the spear points tapers back. So with this, we have an effective spear now that we can go out, look for some frogs, look for some small game, some fish, and procure something to eat. Alright guys, well that'll wrap up our projects for today. I hope you enjoyed being with me as I came out here to work on these, the throwing stick and the frog gig. I did want to offer just one more tip to you. One of the reasons I like to use bamboo versus a hard stick, if I can find it for a frog and a fish gig, is as you're stabbing at these things, it's inevitable you're going to break a couple of these points off. And with having 4, you can continue fishing for a while. But eventually you're going to have to redo this thing. And with bamboo having these nodules every 6 inches or so, you can just drop back to your next nodule, cut you another one, split it. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can even take a small piece and when you put down through the center, use that as a point if you want to, if you're doing more of the fish type activity. If I do that, I like to either glue it in with some pine pitch or tie it in somehow. But that all takes time if you're out along the edge of the pond or your creek or what have you. So just cutting it back and doing another one and just, you know, if it breaks, it breaks. You just recarve out another one. It only takes just a couple of minutes. So anyway, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft. Thanks for joining me once again. I'll have another video up just as soon as I can. Until then, God bless.